Hi friends, welcome to Beautifully Bookish Bethany. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J Maas. This is a collection of prequel novellas to the Throne of Glass series, and I am rereading it for the first time since I read it originally many years ago. We're going to talk about each of the stories as I read them, talk about why they give us important information to the main series, any Easter eggs, etc. I've read the first story in the collection so far. There are 5 of them, so each of these clips will be discussing a specific story. I'm going to try to keep this video a little bit shorter than some of my previous videos. I've been doing in-depth, spoilery discussions and recaps of each of the books in the Throne of Glass series, but I want to keep this a little snappier and see how that goes. First story in the collection is The Assassin and the Pirate Lord. This follows Celaena 2 years prior to the events of Throne of Glass, when she and Sam, who we know from the Throne of Glass series had been someone she had fallen in love with, someone who died, who was very important to her. This is before they have that kind of a relationship. They are rivals at this point, and they are sent on a mission by Erebin, King of the Assassins, to meet with pirates to do business, and they think that what they're doing is one thing and it turns out to be something else, and the two of them end up working together to free some slaves, and it seems like this is perhaps the start of where their relationship becomes more than just rivals. So there is some really interesting and important information that we get about Celaena's past, about her relationship with Sam, and about these pirates, and kind of sets us up for who she was, things that she did, and where that might take her in the future. Prior to all of this happening, there had been 7 trusted assassins who were close to Erebin, and one of them's name was Ben. He's late to this meeting. Sam is sitting in his seat. She doesn't really know why that is. Sam and her, we hear, are rivals. They had known each other since they were children. Erebin took her in and declared her, not Sam, to be his protege and heir. That hadn't stopped Sam from trying to undermine her at any turn. And now at 17, Sam was still a year older than she, and he still hadn't forgotten he would always be second best. So they've been set up by Erebin to be rivals for this position, even though he said that she is his heir. We find out that Sam's mother had been a courtesan or a sex worker, and she had opted to leave him with assassins. And then we find out that Ben was killed. So Ben is somebody who was important to Celaena. She's really upset about this. It turns out that another of the 7 was missing, and Erebin had sent Sam to see why they were missing. This all becomes important because we start to realize that Erebin is maybe engaging in some underhanded things, and I would suspect, I don't know if Celaena suspects this, but I would suspect maybe moving people out of the way who might not like what he's choosing to do. So a couple months after Ben dies, Celaena and Sam are with Captain Rolfe, Lord of the Pirates. They're on Skulls Bay, which is an island for pirates. It is well protected. It has this thing called the chain that they can raise and lower that can break ships in half. So it's very well protected. They think that they're there because 3 assassins had supposedly been murdered by pirate hands, and they think they're there to kind of take him to task for it. But Erebin sent sealed letters that they haven't read, so they don't really know for sure what's going on. While they're waiting for him, Celaena looks around. She finds a perfumed purple paper signed by someone named Jacqueline, a love letter. I feel like maybe this is an important bit of information. I don't remember why, perhaps. And Celaena at this point is masked and cloaked to conceal her identity. All that people know about her is that she's female. They don't know how old she is. They don't know what she looks like. So Captain Rolfe finally comes in. He's only in his late 20s and yet is a legendary pirate, and he has a map, a mythic map he'd sold his soul to have inked on his hands. The map of the world's oceans, the map that changed to show storms, foes, and treasures. So this is really interesting. He's got a magical map on his hands. And so Celaena starts off taking him to task for the pirates that were murdered, and he is like, no, it wasn't us. Finally, he opens the letter and he's like, so I see you didn't read it. Your master drives a hard bargain, but his terms aren't unfair. Perhaps you should have read the letter before you started flinging accusations at me and my men. There will be no retribution for those dead assassins, whose deaths, your master agrees, were not my fault in the least. He's outlined a trade agreement for slaves that will be ready to leave in 2 days. Selena is horrified. How could he stoop so disgustingly low? And to tell her she was going to Skulls Bay for one thing, but to really send her here for this? Sam had known about this deal, but he'd somehow forgotten to mention the truth behind their visit, even during the 10 days they'd spent at sea. So she asks some questions about how long he's been involved in the slave trade, and then later when she and Sam are alone, she kind of freaks out about it. What business does Arobin have getting involved in the slave trade? We're better than that. We don't need that money. Unless Arobin was lying, unless all of his extravagant spending was done with non-existent funds. And then this is a key moment. She says, maybe Arobin wants to increase what wealth he already had. If Ben were alive, he wouldn't have stood for it. Ben would have been as disgusted as she was, even though he had been Arobin's like right-hand man for years. So maybe this is why he was killed. Maybe Arobin was actually behind it. I mean, Selena, of course, doesn't think this because she's not very quick to pick this up. She finds out that the map, the magic map on the hands of the pirate, hasn't actually moved in 8 years, ever since magic was taken away. And so we know from the main series how the magic was taken away. You know, they kind of tease each other about like, oh, are you going to kill me tonight? And he says, believe me, if I came home without you, Arobin would skin me alive. Literally, if I'm going to kill you, Selena, it'll be when I can actually get away with it. Okay. So we get some more information about the way that they transport slaves. It seems like in this, Sarah is drawing on the history of the transatlantic slave trade and the way that that was done, and kind of the horror of, you know, being chained together in small spaces where people end up dying. It's pretty horrific, and it seems like that's kind of what we're drawing on here. And Selena basically is like, you know what? I'm gonna come up with a way to free these slaves because this is messed up. And Sam realizes that she's planning something. He's like, come on, I've grown up with you. I know when you have a plot. We know that these slaves are from captured territories. Many of them are from Eelway, which means a lot of them are probably black. And that is not specifically said here, but that is probably the case. She goes with Captain Rolfe to inspect the slaves that Arobin is supposedly buying, hoping it'll give her more information to help free them, and has a hard time not fighting with him. Sam realizes what's going on and like knots his fingers through her, holds her hand to try to help her calm down in the process. And Rolfe says, if I can't think of a good place to sell the slaves, I'll send them to Calaculla. If your master has leftovers, sending them to Endovir might be a good option. Otterland's stingy with what they'll offer when buying slaves for the salt mines, but it's better than making no money at all, which is interesting because we know that that's where Selena ends up, is in Endovir. We find out too that there are children involved. The children, where do they go? He says, we try to keep the children with their mothers, but at the auction block we can't control whether they're separated. Some wealthy households might want the children for scullery maids or stable boys. A brothel madam might show up at the auction too. Sam's face went white with fury because his mother at 8 years old had been sold to a brothel and only lived 28 years before she was killed by a jealous client. So he is now also upset given his history. Selena and Sam have this conversation where she's like freaking out. She's like, how can you bear to look at those people and not do anything? The slaves? It makes me sick. It makes me so mad. I think I might do something as foolish as freeing the slaves. What? Rolfe will kill you, or Arobin will if Rolfe doesn't try first. Why do you have to try? We're assassins. We kill people. We destroy lives every day. We have a choice. Maybe not when we were children, when it was Arobin or death, but now you and I have a choice in the things that we do. So it's interesting that even though she has such a change that has to happen later in her life, she always had this desire to help people. And, you know, maybe she was sort of disillusioned when eventually we have like her betrayal and, you know, maybe the death of Sam and all of that. But she did reckless things to protect people a couple of years before Throne of Glass. And so it seems like part of her character arc is coming back to where she had been previously after the trauma that she'd experienced after this. So Sam suggests that maybe Arobin sent them because he wanted them out of Rifthold right now and needed to get them out of the city for a month. Sam implies that he thinks maybe Arobin set Ben up to die. Selena says we can trust him, but then she kind of feels stupid about saying it. We also have a moment where she's by the beach and she turns north towards the source of this cold breeze that smelled of a faraway land she hadn't seen in 8 years. Pine and snow, a city still in winter's grasp. That distant city that had once long ago been her home, Orinth, a city of light and music, watched over by an alabaster castle with an opal tower so bright it could be viewed for miles. She sees the stars, and she instinctively seeks out the stag, Lord of the North, and the immovable star that crowned his head. Back then, she hadn't had any choice. When Arobin offered her this path, it was either that or death. But now, no, she was as limited in her choices as she'd been when she was 8 years old. She was Otterlin's assassin, Arobin Hamel's protege and heir, and she would always be, which we know is not true, so she feels kind of trapped in this. When they go to meet the slaves, she finds one of them who's fluent in the common tongue, and then basically Celaena and Sam, you know, work to try to free them. They make the guards unconscious, get them out of their shackles, and tell them, listen, tomorrow we're going to make a distraction. You just row and row and row, and we'll find a way to get the chain down so that you can escape. Row like hell. Part of their distraction is they're at the pub with Rolf and supposedly drinking, but not really drinking. They're faking it and they're getting ready to start their distraction. She has a conversation with the pirate Rolf. She says, if you make my master and me as much money as you claim, I'll show you my face. Rolf glanced at the tattooed map on his hands. Did you really sell your soul for that? She asked. When you show me your face, I'll tell you the truth. Deal. At one point, Sam slips a hand around her waist, his touch somehow sending a bright hot flame through her, and she had to wonder if he was still pretending too. So we have the hints of this more romantic relationship starting to begin between the two of them. And then Celaena trips somebody and the tavern explodes into a brawl. So they're able to escape, but Rolf goes after them because he notices that she had started it on purpose, and he's like, I'm gonna kill you, Celaena Sardothian. In order to distract him, she takes off her hood and her mask and shows that she's this pretty 16-year-old girl, and he's like, you're, what sort of trickery is this? And he's, you know, horrified by the fact that Arobin sent a 16-year-old to deal with me. He sent the best of the best. Consider that an honor. This is very Celaena, right? And he does say, you fool, you think freeing 200 slaves will solve anything? There are thousands of slaves out there. Are you going to march into Calaculla and Endovir and free them too? Stupid girl. If I don't kill you, your master will. So she doesn't care at this point, but again, I think that this is giving us hints at how much more she's going to have to do to actually make a real impact. The slaves are rowing. Sam is going up to try to remove the chain. He's able to do it, but there is an explosion, and she's certain that it's killed Sam. She's freaking out about it. Meanwhile, she kind of threatens Rolf, gets him in a position where she could kill him, and she says, you're gonna sign these and stamp each with your seal, two papers that she's already written. One of these is a letter to my master. It says the deal is over, that you won't be sending him slaves, and if you catch him entering into another slave trade agreement with anyone else, you'll bring your whole armada to punish him. The other one says that Captain Rolf, bearer of the magical map inked on your hands, will never ever sell a slave again. And if you catch any pirates selling or transporting or trading slaves, you'll hang, burn, or drown them yourself. And that Skulls Bay is forevermore a safe haven for any slaves fleeing Otterlin's clutches. And he's like, I won't sign. Don't you know who I am? And she says, fine. I memorized your signature when I was in your office that first day. It won't be hard to forge. And as for your seal ring, I also took that the first day in your office, just in case I needed it. Turns out I was right. And so finally he's like, why go to so much trouble for slaves? Because if we don't fight for them, who will? Sign the papers. And how will you know that I'm holding true to my word? I have my sources, and if I hear that you're trading slaves, no matter where you go, no matter how far you run, I will hunt you down. And he says, if you ever set foot in my territory again, your life is forfeit. May the gods help Arobin. So he signs it. This is important because she is going to have to go back to Skulls Bay at some point in the future, and he says her life is forfeit if she ever comes back. But also, this is the origination of why Skulls Bay turned into a haven for slaves. Does it totally make sense that he would hold to his word, especially once she's been captured? Maybe not. Maybe we find out more about that later, but this gives us some interesting history on this. So she goes back to look for Sam's body, she assumes, but of course, he got out of the way. He's totally fine because they have a whole romance to have. Sam smiled, a twinkle of mischief, a hint of exasperation, the kindness that would always, always make him a better person than she was. Before she knew what she was doing, Celaena threw her arms around him and held him close. Sam stiffened, but after a heartbeat, his arms came around her. Again, the start of what's going to become a romance. I don't know why she thinks he's a better person than her. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but that is her feeling. Then she, you know, moves away and says, if you ever tell anyone about me embracing you, I'll get you. Come on, Sardathian. If you're done liberating slaves and destroying pirate cities, let's go home. I will say the first time that I read this, I think because of where in the series I was much more interested in continuing. So I think reading it at this point after book 2 so far to me feels a lot better and more interesting, where we're just getting backstory on her instead of being at a point where we just want to move forward with the plot. This is not necessarily my favorite story in the collection. In fact, if I remember correctly, the next story was originally my favorite one. But we do get some interesting information on her relationship to the pirates, her past in terms of wanting to free slaves, and the start of her relationship with Sam. So I will be back once I have read The Assassin and the Healer, and we'll talk about it. I'm back to talk about the second story, The Assassin and the Healer. This is a simple story, but it's a really important one because it's where we're introduced to a character who ends up becoming very important later on in the series. And I do think it's kind of cool to see how Sarah did that, to connect the dots between this young healer that Selena meets and helps out early in her life and who that woman ends up becoming. So this story picks up after the events of the last one. Selena is being punished by Arabin and sent off to train in the Red Desert. And on her journey to the Red Desert, which we will hear more about in future stories, she stops off in this small town and ends up connecting with this young woman who is working in a tavern. Her name is Irene Towers, and if you have... Wait. It's just now like dawning on me that her last name is Towers and the book that she's important in is Tower of Dawn. A little on the nose, but okay. But yeah, Irene Towers is working as a barmaid in a tavern. She sees Selena in the White Pig Inn where she's working, and Selena is wearing this big ruby brooch and is kind of spoiling for a fight, right? Irene's been working here for a year now. Her mom had died. She wanted to be a healer and everything had kind of fallen apart. She comes from a family of healers who had magic. So her mother and her grandmother both were healers with magic. She was training in that, and then when magic was removed from the world, she lost her connection to those magical abilities, but she still was hoping to make her way to this place. We'll see where it is, but hoping to make her way to a place where she could get training for healing. So we get a description of Irene. She has golden tan skin and absolutely ordinary brown hair of average height. Only her eyes, a bright gold brown, gave her any source of pride. So Irene seems to be maybe a person of color, golden tan skin, brown hair and golden brown eyes. It's a little vague. It's not as explicit with Nehemia, but maybe that's the intent. Selena also has bruises from Arabin beating her after what happened. She still feels like it's worth it. The ruby brooch she wore practically begged for trouble. She wore it to invite trouble. It was a gift from Arabin on her 16th birthday, and she hoped someone would try to steal it. But she's leaving at dawn to sail to the deserted land where she'd make the journey to the Red Desert to meet the mute master of assassins with whom she was to train for a month as further punishment for her betrayal of Arabin. So that's where she's headed. She doesn't know what's happened to Sam, where he is, how he was punished. It's unclear. There are mercenaries looking to pick a fight with Selena. Irene is wondering if she should give her a heads up that they might try to kill her and isn't sure if she should. We get a little bit of her backstory. Her mother had been a good woman who never turned away a sick or wounded person, no matter how poor, from the door of their cottage in southern Fenharrow. As a prodigiously gifted healer blessed with no small amount of magic, her mother had always said it wasn't right to charge people for what she had been given for free by Silba, the goddess of healing. Her mother was put to death because she had previously used magic, even though she said her magic had disappeared. They didn't listen. They took her life. Irene ran away and escaped. She has a ring that she wears that had belonged to her mother and her mother's mother, kind of an heirloom. She pretends she's married to try to, you know, get away from creepy men at the bar. A few months before her 18th birthday, she took the money she had saved up and left. She set out for Antica, a city of learning on the southern continent, a realm untouched by Otterland and war, where rumor claimed magic still existed. She had run out of money, taken the job at the place where she works, saying it was temporarily, but has stayed there because she's concerned that when she would arrive, she wouldn't have money to pay for her training at the Torre Chesme, the great academy of healers and physicians. That's where she was headed. She wanted to go train there. She's been kind of stuck in a rut, not progressing her life when she meets Selena. Irene leaves that night and some men surround her, try to steal her tips, and Selena comes and saves her. Because again, she was spoiling her for a fight. It does say Selena hadn't meant to save the barmaid. It had been sheer luck she spotted the 4 mercenaries creeping about the streets. Sheer luck, they seemed as eager for trouble as she was. The fight was over too quickly to really be enjoyable or be a balm to her temper, if you could even call it a fight. And the 4th one had gotten away. She's bleeding. Irene is like, well, I used to be training as a healer. Let me at least bandage up your arm. You know, let me repay the debt that I owe you. So Selena follows her in. Irene and Selena kind of have a conversation. Irene ends up telling her that she was originally headed to go and continue her training at the Healers Academy when she ran out of money. And Selena's like, let me give you a bit of advice. From one working girl to another, life isn't easy, no matter where you are. You'll make choices you think are right and then suffer for them. So if you're going to be miserable, you might as well go to Antica and be miserable in the shadow of the Torre Chesme. She's like very bitter at the moment. You should just like steal the money you need and leave. And she's like, I'm no thief. So you'd rather rot away here with a clean conscience? Then Selena asks, if you managed to attend the Torre Chesme, what would you do afterward? Irene says, I'd come back. Not to here, I mean, but to the continent. Go back to Fenharrow. There are a lot of people who need good healers these days. Then Selena's like, well, whatever you do, you should probably learn a few things about defending yourself. So she takes her out and teaches her some self-defense maneuvers. One thing that we're keyed into here, which we get this told to us in Throne of Glass, is that Selena, before the death of her parents, had also wanted to go train to be a healer. She feels some kind of a connection with Irene. Selena had once dreamed of dwelling in the fabled cream-colored towers of the Torre, of walking the narrow sloping streets of Antica and seeing wonders brought in from lands she'd never heard of, but that was a lifetime ago, a different person ago. So Irene picks up these self-defense maneuvers and is like, oh, I should teach this to my friend Jessa, and Selena says, if you get the chance, we'll teach it to any female who will take the time to listen, which is key because she does, I think, end up teaching self-defense classes. Selena then lets her get into a position where she's being attacked again, but in a safer circumstance because she wants her to like practice her moves, I guess, and Irene's kind of pissed about it. But then Selena leaves, and when Irene goes back to her room, she finds a leather pouch on her bed with a note pinned under it that says, for wherever you need to go and then some. The world needs more healers. And inside is gold coins and the big ruby brooch. This is important for later on. The gods had vanished, her mother once claimed, but had they? Had it been some young god who had visited tonight clothed in the skin of a battered young woman, or had it merely been their distant whispers that prompted the stranger to walk down that alley? An hour later, no one stopped Irene Towers as she walked out of the White Pig and never looked back. Meanwhile, Selena boarded a ship an hour before dawn, and a week later reached the Mute Master and his fortress of silent assassins. It says she'd added Arobyn's ruby brooch as a parting thought, hoped that an assassin's jewel would pay for a healer's education, prayed that somehow, years from now, Irene Towers would return to this continent and maybe, just maybe, heal their shattered world a little bit, which we know that she does because she ends up being a key character in Tower of Dawn, where she has now trained to become a healer. So I think it's interesting the way that everything kind of comes full circle, that even though Selena was not able to go and do that, she gives the money to this young woman who needs it to be able to do it, who ends up being a critical part of helping her later on too. So I really love the connections there. I think the connection with the ruby is interesting as well. I think it's cool. So next story is The Assassin in the Desert. So we're going to read about her in the Red Desert, and I will be back once I've read it to discuss. Hello, it is the next day. I've read the next story. Let's talk about it. This is The Assassin and the Desert. And I actually remembered quite a bit of this story and of what happens once I started reading it. I was like, oh, I think I know what's going to happen at the end. I think she makes this friend and the friend ends up betraying her. So it was interesting rereading it, knowing what's going to happen. But I quite liked this story. I really enjoyed it. So she is sent by Arabin into the desert to train with the mute assassins, who are not as mute as people think they are, but the head of them does not often speak, although we do find out at the end that he occasionally does. Which is kind of funny. You know, it reminds me a little bit of things like the Karate Kid movie, stuff where people go and they want to be trained by the master, but the master's like, you're gonna do some really basic stuff before you get what you think you want, which is the cool training, and then those things end up being really important. That's kind of what we get Selena doing, right? So her first day there, she has to run 2 miles in the heat carrying buckets of water and then bring them back and try to make it. And she does that for a while. And then when eventually the master does deign to teach her, he starts by just having her sit and watch different animals. So like a poisonous snake, a bat, and then of course it all comes full circle and it's important for different moves that she's gonna learn. But meanwhile, she's befriending this young woman who wears armor, who, you know, we kind of like, who has been there for a long time, has never been trained by the master, and then she ends up betraying them at the end of the story, and it's kind of sad. But it's interesting because I think this is a case of Selena recognizing that assassins don't have to be the way Arabin is. Number one, they don't have to be sexist. She is the only female assassin with Arabin Hamel, and here she is one of many female assassins. They're like, is a lot of infighting and competition, and they don't work together, they're not like a family. Here they are. And so it's like seeing a different way for her, and her sort of slowly opening up and then getting shut down by this betrayal towards the end. So I think it's a really interesting story from that perspective. So on her way there, she has to go through the singing sands, where each grain hums and whines and moans, and they spend a whole day monitoring each step, careful to keep the sand beneath them ringing in harmony so that the sands don't dissolve into quicksand. I thought that was kind of interesting. We also know that Arabin has sent her there supposedly to learn obedience and discipline in the height of summer in the Red Desert, was what he'd failed to add. And I did forget this too. She has to get a letter of recommendation from the master by the end of the month that she's spent there. Otherwise, she's out, basically. So that's her goal. She also has some interactions with the master's son. Oh yeah, Ansel is the girl that she befriends. She also lets her go at the end. She doesn't kill her when she could have. She like lets her escape. So I don't know if Ansel, I'm trying to remember if Ansel shows up later on, but I think maybe she does, and that might be important. Ansel wants revenge because her territory was stolen and her family was killed. Her father was the Lord of Briarcliff. What was his name? Ilias? Ilias, right. So Ilias is the master's son, and he kind of has a thing for her, but at this point she's starting to develop feelings for Sam and is like, no, I can't kiss you. She doesn't know what's happened to Sam because she got beaten up before him, and she remembers Sam screaming while she was being beaten up, "I'll kill you," so she's concerned about him, but she doesn't know what happened to him. Ansel has wolves on her armor and on her sword because that's the animal important to her family. I can't remember if that ends up being important. Oh yeah, there is a line where they say, if you can run 3 miles across the dunes of the Red Desert, then 3 miles back, you can do almost anything. So the fact that she eventually is able, okay, so it was 3 miles, not 2 miles, but that I think is interesting. And then here's the thing too, that the son of the mute master, right? She could tell Ilias, she could tell he was utterly at home here, as if this place had been made for him and he never needed to question his spot in it. A strange sort of envy wended its way through her heart. So they also have a lot in common because she's the protege of the Master of Assassins, and yet she sees how different it is. And I also feel like this is maybe the start of her seeing how toxic Arabin is. One added piece of this is that Ansel is in kind of a sexual relationship with a man who is much older than her. So Ansel is 18, but they got together when she was 15, and Mikhail was in his 20s. So Selena feels kind of gross about this. We eventually find out that Ansel did this to try to train better, to try to get what she needed to get revenge. So I think Selena feels for Ansel and where she's at, which is why she lets her go at the end. Ansel is from the Flatlands, which is this, we get some interesting information here. The Flatlands used to be part of the Witch Kingdom. You could say they're somewhat cursed. When the Crocan queens ruled 500 years ago, it was very beautiful. At least the ruins all over the place seemed like they would have been beautiful. But then the three Iron Teeth clans destroyed it all when they overthrew the Crocan dynasty. Some witches like the Crocans were gifted with ethereal beauty, but the Iron Teeth clans have iron teeth sharp as fishes. Actually, their iron fingernails are more dangerous. Those can gut you in one swipe. But when the Iron Teeth clans destroyed the kingdom, they say the last Crocan queen cast a spell that turned the land against any that flew under the banners of the Iron Teeth, so that no crops would grow, the animals withered up and died, and waters turned muddy. It's not like that now, though. The land has been fertile ever since the Iron Teeth clans journeyed east toward your lands. Really interesting. She also tells her a story about when she was a little girl and she and her sister and a couple of their friends snuck out of Briarcliff Hall. There was a ruined watchtower with an archway that went through the bottom of the watchtower. You could see through it to the other side of the hill. And one of the stable boys told my sister, if you looked through the archway on the night of the summer solstice, you might see into another world. So we have another thing of like gateways and portals. Maybe, which is interesting. She was too scared to set foot in it, but Maddie went the rest of the way with her sister, and then her sister came running, grabbed her arm, and they ran back, and then she said they went under the archway of the tower and saw an open door leading to its interior, but an old woman with metal teeth was standing in the shadows. She grabbed Maddie and dragged her into the stairwell. They went back at dawn and there was no trace of Maddie or the old woman. They just found the bones of a child, white as ivory and picked clean. So this is the origin of some of the things that Selena knows about the witches and where she learned them that we hear in the other books. I guess it's worth saying that Ansel betrays the assassins because they're not taking their army and helping her get revenge, and Lord Barrick, who's the local lord who, you know, fights against them, says that he will. Whether he actually will is a question. Oh, that's right. And this is also the place where we get introduced to the concept of spider silk, which is important and comes up later on. She goes to the city with Ansel and, you know, is shopping around the market, and she sees somebody with spider silk. There were legends about the horse-sized Stygian spiders that lurked in the woods of the ruined mountains of the north, spinning their thread for hefty costs. Some said they offered it in exchange for human flesh. Others claimed the spiders dealt in years and dreams and could take either as payment. Regardless, it was as delicate as gossamer, lovelier than silk, and stronger than steel, and she'd never seen so much of it before. It was so rare that if you wanted it, odds were you had to go and get it for yourself. But here it was, yards and yards of raw material waiting to be shaped. A king's ransom. The guy who's selling it is like, oh, most people don't even like know what this is. She says, I knew a courtesan in Rifthold whose madam had a handkerchief made from it given to her by an extraordinarily wealthy client. And that handkerchief had probably cost more than most peasants made in a lifetime. So she finds out that the merchant went there himself, and while he looks to be middle-aged, it turns out he's actually 25, and the spiders took the years of his life off the beginning of his life, not later. He says, everything has a price. 20 years for 100 yards of spider silk. I thought they meant to take them off the end of my life, but even if they'd warned me, I would have said yes. She says, is there anything to be done about the years you lost? Only the death of the spider who consumed my 20 years could return them to me, and only a great warrior could slay a Stygian spider, the greatest warrior in the land, though perhaps an assassin from the north might do. This is interesting, very important, will come up later on in the series. So she tells him, next time you're in Rifthold, seek out Arab and Hamel, and, you know, I'll see what I can do to try to take down the spider. And then in return, he gives her a little folded bit of woven spider silk, no larger than 6 inches, in a box. And so she's got kind of a commitment to that. This is also where she steals an Asterion horse. She is pushed into doing it by Ansel. She ends up riding one named Casita, meaning drinker of the wind. We also find out during the 2 days after she woke up after getting beaten by Arabin before he sent her off on this quest, she'd used a good chunk of her savings to purchase her own apartment away and well hidden from the assassin's keep. She hadn't told anyone, partially because she was worried she might change her mind while she was away. But with each day here, with each lesson with the master, she was more and more resolved to tell Arabin she was moving out. There was no rule that said she had to live with him, and if he ever laid a hand on her again, or Sam, she'd see to it he lost that hand. Actually, that he lost everything up to that elbow. So this is information on how she has this secret apartment that we know she has in the Throne of Glass book. When Ansel betrays them, she tries to trick Celaena into leaving with a supposed letter from the master saying that he wasn't going to train her anymore. And she initially leaves and then realizes something's wrong. The letter of recommendation is blank, so she hurries back to find that people have invaded, and she makes it there in time to just barely save the master and his son. We also know that the master had been poisoned with Gloriella, which is a poison that is used against Celaena later on, so that we see other places as well. Ansel is like, I tried to protect you. They fight, Celaena gets the best of her, and then decides to let her go and says, in 20 minutes I'm going up to the battlements and I'm going to fire an arrow at you, and you'd better hope you're out of range by then, because if you're not, that arrow is going straight through your neck. So she goes up, she shoots an arrow, and it barely misses, just a little behind her. But it also says she'd promised Ansel she had 20 minutes to get out of range. Celaena had fired after 21, so she definitely chose to let her go. The master is glad that she didn't kill Ansel and had known who she really was and what she was there for, and was waiting and hoping she would trust enough to tell him what she was there for, but she didn't. She let her hate consume her until she became something else entirely, a person I don't think she ever wished to be. This, I think, is important. It says, if you can learn to endure pain, you can survive anything. Some people learn to embrace it, to love it. Some endure it through drowning in sorrow or by making themselves forget. Others turn it into anger. But Ansel let her pain become hate and let it consume her. Also very relevant to what Celaena will go through later on. For what it's worth, I believe you were the closest thing to a friend Ansel has ever allowed herself to have, and I think she sent you away because she truly cared for you. You spared her life and returned her father's sword. She will not soon forget that. Accurate. He gives her the letter to bring back to Arabin, says that she will always have a place there if she wants it. Then he gives her gold and he says, when you give your master his letter, also give him this and tell him that in the Red Desert, we do not abuse our disciples. Interesting. So that is The Assassin and the Desert. Next we have The Assassin and the Underworld. I'll be back when I've read it. All right, I have read The Assassin and the Underworld. I liked this one less than the other ones. Celaena is kind of at her worst in here. She's jealous and bratty and self-involved. And also everything goes right over her head. She misses very obvious clues that things are not as they seem. So I feel like we see kind of the worst elements of Celaena in this story. This takes place, all the stories are in chronological order. So she's gone back to Rifthold, she's with Arabin, and he gives her a new job to take out this guy who's supposedly trying to promote the slave trade. And she's like, wow, Arabin must have changed his mind, and this is so great. And so she does it and misses all of the signs that that is not at all what's going on. Not at all. In fact, this man, even though he's kind of a creep, was trying to create safe houses and a network to keep people from being enslaved. And she inadvertently ends up helping the person who is in fact trying to create a trade agreement for slavery. So yeah, that's the bulk of the story, the complexity and super messiness of her relationship with Arabin and how he gaslights her and controls her and the things that he does, giving her all these gifts, saying he's sorry, and then purposefully doing something to really hurt her. It's also the start of her romance with Sam. So she's back, she's jealous of him and Lysandra, who's a courtesan, a sex worker that we know Celaena hates. And she thinks, oh, maybe there's something going on with Sam. There's not, but we see her be jealous. Her and Sam finally have a conversation. They say they love each other, they kiss and like make out in a sewer, which is kind of gross. I'm like, why are you making out in a sewer? But okay. And then we find out Lysandra, who has turned 17, is now getting her virginity is getting auctioned off. If you remember in an earlier book, we know that when Celaena paid her debt to Arobynn with all the gold that she had gotten from the Mute Master, that he spent it all in one night, and we find out that the way he spent it all was bidding on Lysandra, the girl who he had invested in her upbringing, and then he slept with her, which is gross and creepy. And then Celaena also sells her Asterion mare and uses the money from that to pay off Sam's debt and tells Arobynn she's moving out. So they're cutting ties with Arobynn. They're moving out. They are both free. They want to be together, but we know things are going to go really wrong, right? There is a lot that happens in this story. I think it's important in terms of the information we get about some of these relationships, but also I don't enjoy it as much as some of the other stories because Celaena is just like, like honestly pretty irritating in a lot of it. There were a few things I wanted to point out. So a little history on Lysandra. They've known each other for 7 years. Celaena couldn't recall a time when she did not want to beat in the girl's face with a brick or throw her out a window. It didn't help that Arobynn had spent a good deal of money assisting Lysandra in her rise from street orphan to one of the most anticipated courtesans in Rifthold's history. He was good friends with Lysandra's madam and had been Lysandra's doting benefactor for years. Which is creepy. She's 17. He's known her since she was a literal child. Ugh. And he calls her his niece, which is even creepier. So people think she's his niece. Ew. Oh yeah, Celaena gets a cool black outfit. It's fitted with all of these like secret blades and stuff, which ends up being helpful for her when she gets captured. And that square of spider silk she has, she ends up asking that it be put over the heart in Sam's suit to protect him, and it does end up saving his life later. Part of the whole deal is Celaena not figuring out that she's getting played by Arobynn, that obviously he has not changed his mind about slavery being perfectly fine. And Sam even brings up a point that she brushes off at one point. He says, I wonder if Bardingdale and the others are having any luck convincing the king to fund their road. I wonder why she would even want it built, since she seems so eager to make sure the slave trade stays out of Melisande for as long as possible. Celaena says, if anything, it means she has absolute faith that we won't fail. Girl, no. That is not what it means. What it means is you are being played and she is negotiating funds to build the road with the fact that, like, this is what they're doing. Sam very sweetly finds her sheet music that she wanted. Celaena is super judgy of courtesans at a party that she has to go to. Their breasts looking like they're going to come out of their corsets. She's very judgmental. It's irritating. There is a moment that's really interesting at the party when she's been drinking a bit and she starts dancing with this masked young noble, and he asks what her name is. And she says, my name is wind and rain and bone and dust. My name is a snippet of a half-remembered song. I have no name. I am whoever the keepers of my fate tell me to be. Interesting. Interesting. That I feel like is maybe the biggest Easter egg that we get in this story for things that are important later on in the series. Celaena accidentally gets captured by the guy that she's supposed to take stuff from and kill, and he leaves her in a sewer that's about to flood. She's able to escape, but I feel like most fantasy books, many fantasy books, have the requisite gross crawl through the sewer for plot reasons, and this has that too. If you read a lot of fantasy, you know this is a surprisingly common trope, and it is always disgusting. Celaena goes in and finds these documents that she's supposed to get. Again, an example of where she is giving explanations for things that make no sense to the evidence that she's actually seeing. She flips through these papers. Maps with red marks and random places, charts with numbers and names, list after list of name and location, cities, towns, forests, mountains, all in Melisande. These weren't just Melisanders opposed to slavery. These were locations for planned safe houses to smuggle slaves to freedom. This was enough information to get all these people executed or enslaved themselves, and Donoval, that wretched bastard, was going to use this information to force those people to support the slave trade or be turned over to the king. The way that she assumes that he has this information to give to the king, I'm like, something is off here. And it takes her a while to realize something is off. It takes his partner, who she chases after, burning his papers and poisoning himself to death to realize, something's off. This is not what I expected. So she burns the rest of his papers. Arobin is like, I've never seen you leave such a mess in your wake. You won't be paid for this. She wanted a body in both documents, and you only gave me one of the three. And then he laughs at her, saying, you haven't figured it out yet, have you? There was no trade agreement. The real meetings of the slave trade negotiations have been going on in the glass castle between the king and Leifer. It was a key point of persuasion in convincing him to let them build their road. She realizes that Donoval, the guy she killed, had been working to set up a system of safe houses and form an alliance of people against slavery across the empire. Donoval, had bad habits or not, had been working to help the slaves. Great. And then Arobin is just so creepy when she says, here's money going to your vault. Sam's debt to you is now paid. And he's like, I guess that's a good thing, because I spent all the money you gave me when I was at Lysandra's bidding last night. My vault feels a little empty because of it. And she's like, I'm moving out. I bought an apartment. I'm moving there today. Do you come back and visit us sometime, Selena? Why did you do it? Why shouldn't I enjoy Lysandra after all these years investing in her career? And why do you care what I do with my own money? From what I've heard, you have Sam now. Both of you are free of me. Of course he'd found out already. And of course he'd try to make this about her, try to make it her fault. Why shower her with gifts only to do this? Why deceive her about Donoval and then torture her with it? Why had he saved her life 9 years ago just to treat her this way? He'd spent her money on a person he knew she hated, to belittle her. Months ago, it would have devastated her, but now, with Sam by her side and having everything, his petty, vicious parting shot had narrowly missed the mark. So she leaves and is like, I hope I don't see you for a while, because I might kill you. She meets up with Sam, lets him know the deal, that they're both free, and it's, they walk off into the sunset until the next story, The Assassin and the Empire. I will be back once I've read the final story. Hello. I finished reading the last story several days ago, and I have been busy and stressed out, so I am finally making this video so that I can then edit all of this together. But now I'm gonna have to go back and remind myself what exactly happened, because it's been a few days. So The Assassin and the Empire basically takes us from the end of the last story to Selena getting carted off to the salt mines of Endovier and what exactly happened and how she ended up there. Because we ended the last story with her and Sam kind of riding off into the sunset together. But listen, you think Arobin is happy to just let them be happy? No, of course he's not. Of course he's not. So he is gonna fuck everything up for them, because that's what he does. So let's see what happens. We start with after, which is Selena curled in the corner of a prison wagon, and then go back to 11 days earlier. What happened to get her there? She sneaks up above a theater to watch a music performance that she used to go to with Arobin, and she sees him with Lysandra at his side. What is hella creepy is it says a month after Arobin had won the bidding for Lysandra's virginity, it seemed he was still monopolizing her time. This is really disturbing, because he is much older than her. He was almost like a father-ish figure to her. Ew. But Selena doesn't think about that. She just hates Lysandra, because of course she does. Back to her apartment that she'd been sharing with Sam. He's not there. She realizes he's probably gone to go fight at the vaults to earn money, even though she told him he shouldn't do it. And she's pissed, and she goes to get him. So he's there. He's easily winning fights. I have a note here that I'm like, why does she think he's such a good person when he's like happy to beat up these dudes? I don't know. After his fight, she kind of drags him out. She's like, you promised you wouldn't go back there. I didn't promise. I said I'd think about it. Risking yourself for a few coins is absurd. We need whatever money we can get. We have money. It won't last forever. especially not with your lifestyle. My lifestyle? And then the thing is too, he wants to leave Rifthold. He's like, what's keeping us here? And she's like, well, where would we go? And he's like, you're only staying because you can't think of leaving Erebin. Then she's like, no, that's not true. One more contract each, and then we could move. It would help with our expenses. And he's like, or we could say hell with it and go. How will we establish ourselves in a new city without Erebin's support? But Sam is like, no, I want to leave the guild too. I don't want to still be in the Assassin's Guild paying dues. And she's like, well, then we need his blessing. We can't just leave or we'll be looking over our shoulders forever. So basically they're like trying to find a way to get enough money to leave the Assassin's Guild and start a new life. Sam's like, I'm not going to grovel, not to him. And the thing too that eventually we see come up is that Sam is really insecure about the fact that he's not earning money and Selena is. He's also insecure about the fact that she's better than him. So it's a lot of this like toxic masculinity. I think it's so interesting reading this and thinking about how in Throne of Glass, Selena kind of idolizes him, makes him seem as if he's perfect when he's really not, and then comparing that to Chaol, who is not threatened by her in the way that Sam is. It's, yeah, I don't know. The other thing is they've been living together for a month and they're still not sleeping together. And, you know, later on, Selena's like, well, they'd done other things, but still hadn't taken that step. I'm like, is that believable? Maybe. Okay, I get maybe. It's fine, I guess. So they go to the Assassin's Keep to talk to Erebin, say they have a proposal. We're leaving Rifthold, and we'd like to leave the guild too. Ideally, we'd establish our own business in another city on the continent. Nothing that would rival the guild, just a private business for us to make ends meet. He's like, oh, really? You're free to move away. He didn't say anything about leaving the guild. You two are free to do whatever you want. And Selena offers a certain amount of money to leave the guild. He does a counter offer. Sam is like, are you insane? That much money. He had to know somehow how much she had left in the bank, because paying him what he asked would wipe it out entirely. The only money they'd have would be Sam's meager savings. You two are my best. If you leave, then the respect and the money you provide the guild would be lost. I have to account for that. This price is generous. Selena realizes he'd obviously picked this number for a reason, as kind of a slap in the face, but she accepts and says she'll have the funds transferred to him and then we'll be out of the guild. And he's like, understood. The way that she trusts him after this, I don't know. Sam and her have a fight. He's upset that Selena is paying to get him out of the guild again because he feels like he should be paying for himself again. I'm like, dude, get over it. And then Sam goes off and finds a client. They'll pay a lot and they want to keep it from reaching the Assassin's Guild's ears. There's even a contract in it for you. Who's the client? I don't know. The man I spoke to had the usual disguises, hood, unremarkable clothing. He could have been acting on behalf of someone else. This seems sketchy as hell. Why do they want to avoid using the guild? Because they want me to kill Ione Jane and his second in command, Rourke Farron, the biggest crime lord in Rifthold. He's too well guarded, and Farron, the man is a psychopath. He's a sadist. But they're like, well, if we do this, we'll have enough money to tie up our loose ends and move. They decide they're going to take this one last thing so they can move out together, which y'all know it's gonna go very poorly. So they start kind of scoping it out. She goes home one night and finds Erebin sitting in her house, having gotten in. She's mad and is like, get out of my house. Tell me, Selena, do you trust Sam? Have you told him the truth about where you came from? I have a feeling that's something he'd like to know. Perhaps before he dedicates his life to you. She tells him to get out, and he says, no matter what I have done, I really do love you, Selena. Yeah, after you beat her to a pulp. This is not love. This is super toxic. He says, I do the things that I do because I'm afraid, and because I don't know how to express what I feel. This is such bullshit. Such bullshit. So he leaves. Selena does not tell Sam her secret because he says his only secret is that he always loved her, and she's like, well, I can't tell him that I'm secretly the heir of Terrasen, so I guess that's out. So later on, of course, Erebin goes to Sam and says he seems surprised you didn't say anything about his visit. She doesn't tell Sam that he showed up. He also told me to ask about what really happened before he found you half dead on the riverbank when we were children. But Sam is pretty good about this. He says, Selena, when you're good and ready to tell me the truth, I'll do it. No matter what it is, when that day comes, I'll be honored that you trust me enough to do so. I appreciate that. So there's a night where Sam has a job to do. She wouldn't check on him. He wanted to do it on his own. He could be anywhere by now. And she's like, I'm just gonna wait. And then the next morning, he's still not there. She goes to the Assassin's Keep to see if he's there. And Arobyn's like, I'm sorry. And she realizes something has gone very, very wrong. They thought he was still living in the keep, Arobyn said. They left him as a message. I want to see the body. So he's been mutilated. Sam is dead. It says there was a strange musky scent all over him, a smell that was so distinctly not Sam that she almost vomited again. It clung to his golden brown hair, his torn bluish lips. So this is Gloriella, of course, pissed off and wants to go and kill the people who killed Sam. Someone must have tipped off Ferran if he knew to set a trap for Sam. Arobyn? Maybe. Arobyn locks her in so she can't get out. He knows that it'll piss her off. The way he manipulates her into doing exactly what he wants her to do is wild. And then Wesley tries to stop her when she escapes. He's like, where are you going? And she's like, Arobyn can't keep me locked up. I'm not talking about Arobyn. Use your head and think, Selena. Get out of my way. I know you want revenge. I do too for what he did to Sam. I know you. Don't you understand? It's all just a... But she knocks him out. Always a smart one, our Selena. So she goes in through this window that's supposed to be into an empty office, and it is a meeting room full of people. And Ferran is smiling at her, expecting her. Jane is gaping. So clearly one of them knew she was coming. She kills Jane, and then Gloriella sprays through and knocks her out. And Ferran has her. She realizes someone has betrayed her. Not Arobyn. It couldn't be Arobyn. It could. It definitely could. But Ferran has been told not to harm her. And he tells her that she's been dosed with Gloriella. It should wear off in about 6 hours. At least that's how long it lasted on your companion after I caught him. It's a particularly effective tool for keeping people sedated without the constraints of shackles. He's a creep. I'm half tempted to keep you for myself instead of handing you over. But that wasn't part of the bargain, was it? You're dying to know what the bargain was, aren't you? Let's see if I remember correctly. We kill Sam Cortland, you go berserk and break in here, then you kill Jane, and I take Jane's place. So he says, I swore not to harm you, but she's going to be given to the king for justice. Then she sees 3 tall, well-dressed men. She'd seen those 3 men before, somewhere she couldn't quite recall. This sounds like maybe the men at the dance party that she went to. I don't remember if that's important, but maybe it is. She is expecting Arobyn to have rescued her. He has not. She is in the royal prisons. She feels like she failed Sam. We find out why she never met Dorian or Chaol before, because it says, the captain's going to be furious he wasn't here for the trial. Serves him right for gallivanting with the prince along the Surian coast. Some guards say that, so they're off together and don't actually meet her until the events of Throne of Glass. Some of the guards also don't believe she's really Selena Sardothian because she looks too young. One plot hole that I found is we know that Selena has these really iconic eyes with a ring of gold around them. Wouldn't the king know that those are her eyes? Because she meets his eyes in this scene where she meets him. And wouldn't some of the other nobles realize it? I think that's kind of weird. But the king sends her to 9 lives worth of labor in the salt mines of Endovier. You will be sent with orders to keep you alive for as long as possible, so you will have the chance to enjoy Endovier's special kind of agony. Meanwhile, as she is off leaving for the salt mines, Rourke Ferran and Arobyn Hamel watched as the prison wagon was escorted out of the city. Endovier then, Ferran mused. A surprising twist of events. I thought you had planned a grand rescue from the butchering block. So you're not going after the wagon? Obviously not. He's like, you and your men could free her in a matter of moments. Why did you do it? Because I don't like sharing my belongings. He feels possessive of Selena, which honestly makes me think she is going to have more trouble with Arobyn. He's clearly not done with her. So if he did all of this to get her in the salt mines just because she wanted to be happy and leave with Sam, he's probably still got more planned. On her way to the prison, she sees the white stag of Terrasen, and so that was interesting. And near the end of the story, she repeats something that Sam told her he did when he was feeling afraid, saying, "My name is Selena Sardothian, and I will not be afraid." And then she walked into the salt mines. So that is the end of that. I will say that overall, I enjoyed this much better on a reread than on the first time around. I gave this 4 stars. The first time I read it, I gave it 3 stars. So I liked it a lot better. I do think it gives us interesting, useful information. I just think I prefer reading it before Heir of Fire instead of after. So thanks for coming along with me on this journey. Talk to me in the comments down below. Let me know your thoughts or feelings on anything I talked about in this video. And for your question of the day, let me know, what did you think of The Assassin's Blade? Did you like it? Did you you not? Did you think it was needed or useful or overkill? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, it always helps if you give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.